In a world of constant change and innovation, trust is key, knowledge is power, and the inside track is everything. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Bruce Whitfield.
Hello and welcome to Inside Track. I am Bruce Whitfield, and we're going to get a regular update on the state of the commercial property sector in South Africa. Joining us on this edition is Norman Raad, who is the Chief Executive of Broll Auctions and Sales, and also Thushano Mogale, who is a property specialist at Liberty 2 Degrees. Thushano, let's get the objective view from you as the analyst up first today. State of the market as things stand as we head almost to midway through the year.
Well, Bruce, thank you for having me. We're now seeing recovery to the post-pandemic era, but we still have a lot of macroeconomic issues that we are facing. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia, we have to look at how that will affect our domestic economy, as well as changing consumer trends, inflations and such. So ongoing analysis throughout.
Okay, you say recovery. Talk to me about that recovery as you see it.
So when I say recovery, I mean we want to see pre-pandemic performance. As we know, with the pandemic, no one was unaffected by COVID. And in the commercial property space, we saw a big change with office spaces where vacancies were already quite high. We saw a further increase in vacancies. And with retail activity, nothing was the same. So now what REITs have to focus on is not only getting back to pre-pandemic operations, but still achieving growth beyond that. And that's an area of focus.
If I can create an analogy for you then, Thushano, can I suggest that the patient had a terrible car crash, was not wearing their seatbelt, was being wheeled into the emergency room and had a heart attack at the same time.
Oh, goodness.
They've been patched up, they're not bleeding anymore, and there are signs of a pulse.
Well, things will never be the same. I think that's what we have to be cognizant of. And with the patient analogy, the same could be said in the property market. I'm sure Norman could agree with that as well.
Norman, how are you seeing things happen from the auction block?
So, Bruce, we had an auction last month, and it was, we achieved over 50% of sales, confirmed sales. We had the auction of Summer Place, which we achieved, which we believe was a very good offer on the property, yet to be confirmed. So there's obviously activity in their buyers, and we're excited about that. I mean, at those levels, that means there's business for us, and there's business for buyers and for sellers. But we do live in a different world. We're living in a world where there's been a re-evaluation of prices, a resetting of price values. And I think across the board, it's becoming more and more realistic of what the new values are pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. So I'm excited about the way forward because I think people want to get on with things. And we've seen it. I mean, the numbers don't lie.
There's a balance, Norman, is there not? I mean, supply and demand, and you go through times of excess demand and undersupply and periods of oversupply and less demand, and I think we're in the latter phase right now.
So there's a definite oversupply of overvalued properties, and there's an undersupply of good properties at the right value. There are opportunistic buyers. There are a lot of them, and they are there. They are participating, and they are buying at what they believe are the right values of the properties. But there's not a lot of good, valuable properties on the market. I would think that they're being held tightly by the owners. They're not letting go of their assets, the good assets. But I think even the non-core or the properties they're not the A-type properties, they're still overvalued. And I think we're going to see that correction in the next year or 2 years. That's going to definitely come to the fore, and especially in the commercial side, I think those properties, the offices, could be a massive liability for the next 2 to 3 to 4 years.
Thushano, you're seeing similar. I mean, does the data support Norman's on-the-ground experience in terms of people holding on to high-quality assets for as long as they possibly can, hoping for a recovery to realize the sort of prices they might want to realize should they want to put them on the market.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with Norman. Prior to the pandemic, we did also see an oversupply in office space as it was. And then we get through to the pandemic where the traditional model of working in the office has changed completely. We have assets that may have been premium grade that aren't held to the same value anymore because our office trends have changed, and it will take some time to realize the true value of those when people see that assets, the value of the assets can't be sold at the same price.
There's a huge pushback, Norman, against returning to work. I don't know what you guys at Broll are doing in terms of getting people back to work. Certainly offices of people I talk to, there's almost a resistance against going back to the office. There are some people who are just going, well, what are you going to do about it? I'm more productive. I'm happier. I cost you less. So leave me alone and I'll be fine. Thank you very much. But there are still control freaks within the management environment who would like to see bums in seats in the office.
Yeah, I don't know if they're more productive. I think that's debatable. I think people would like to stay at home. I think a lot of people have become used to living and dictating how they would run their lives, but I don't think it's more productive. I think it's been proven now that being in the office around certain different industries, but being around one another and talking about deals and engaging with your staff is more productive and very important for any business. But I've seen a trend of going back to work. People want to go back to work, especially the people that want to do work and want to do sales and deals and create and find business. What I do believe, though, is that the office sector has changed completely. And if you're not going to create an environment where is different to before, where it's an environment that you're looking forward to going to work, and there's a nice place to meet and to surround yourself, and that environment is now a more pleasant place, then they're going to stay at home. And they're not going to want to go to work. So I think you've got to create this kind of hybrid of it's at work, but you're almost enjoying it so much that you don't want to be away from work. And I think that's what these big corporates and these companies are now trending towards, and it's working because there are a lot more people are moving back to the offices.
You seem to agree with that very strongly, Thushano. Are we seeing Google plexes springing up all over South Africa? I'm not sure we're quite as evolved as that, but certainly bosses are going to have to think a lot smarter.
Absolutely. I think what we've seen with the pandemic is that people really value balance with their lives, being in the office, but also being able to, value their personal lives too. And coming back into the office means finding some sort of a balance. And for managers and everything in the office, understanding the importance of having beneficial collaboration amongst everyone and creating that sort of symbiotic modus operandi, for lack of a better term, is exactly what makes the office space more sort of enjoyable to go back to.
And you can't pull somebody off the corporate ladder ahead of you unless you're in the same space as them. So I think it makes perfectly good sense to go do your filthy office politics in person rather than try and do it remotely. There's clearly signs of a turn. I think, Norman. That's what you're suggesting, that there are. I'm not using the term green shoots because it's banned in my world, but that there is opportunity for quality. There's opportunity to realize a decent and a fair price for quality, but quality is in short supply.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that as a property investor, you've got two options. You either invest in direct property or you're going to invest in the REITs. And I think there's massive value to invest in some of these REITs, because I think the underlying property valuations within these REITs exceeds the share price. So there is value there. And, no one's going to, if you buy a direct property, no one's going to sell that to you for below market. They're always trying to get as much as possible. So there's not going to be a discount in purchasing a direct property. So the value, there's still a trend to buy, and there's a value in buying REITs at the discount of their valuations right now. That's the decision that people are going to make at the moment. However, in those valuations with direct property and REITs, I think people are now being there's a lot more scrutiny in what is actually the value of the REITs, of those properties within the REITs, and the direct property that they buy. And I think once we establish that value and the demand comes along, there is a massive uptake for good quality properties or properties at the right price. People always want to own property, and I think that's where the balance is, and the investors making that decision right now. I think there's some good REITs out there that are really, there's very good value, but at the same time, there's good properties that people can buy directly and in the long term see growth and sustainable growth along those lines.
Has our REIT sector bottomed, Thushano? I mean, have we seen the worst for the REIT sector? Because they took an almighty battering in the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm just wondering where they are, sort of on average, relative to global peers.
So with data from the MSCI, we saw negative direct property total returns, far worse than we saw even with the global financial crisis. So it really has reached quite a bottom, at least in the past 20 years. And now we're seeing a recovery towards that, but whether we're recovering at a good enough pace to keep up as like a leading emerging market, and then less so with the rest of the world, is another issue. I think what's really required is good innovation, realizing the value of direct property and with REITs as well, and hoping that we see better recovery as we go along.
Yeah, Norman, I mean, the 2008 global crisis was sparked by leverage of property deals, mostly housing and in the United States. But the market managed to reinflate really quite quickly after that. This seems to be structurally very, very different as a crisis. And I wonder how you are interpreting the crisis upon crisis. First, the COVID crisis, which causes an economic heart attack. We come out of that, we're beginning to emerge from that, and then we have a war in Ukraine, which causes all kinds of other consternations. And of course, there's the looming, of course, of the ever-present crisis of climate change, which everyone warns us is going to be considerably more catastrophic than everything we've seen before. Without being too much of a doomsayer, the future resilience of this sector, where do we sit?
Yeah, so remember, I think we've had such a great run, especially after in 2008, 2009, we had that period where we actually weren't that affected that much, because there was that, at the same time, there was the introduction of the REITs into South Africa, where the distribution of the dividends changed the tax implications of investing in the REITs. That had a material effect, and it basically kept the values of our investments up, and it kept growing. Actually, we saw growth over the next couple of years at that particular period of time, whereas a lot of other people were already within the REIT status of the investments, and it was something that was a delayed drag that we were now enjoying as an investment in this country. With regards to where we are right now, I think we've got massive challenges. I think just the foundations, the infrastructure, the rates. I heard today that there's new rates valuations, the increased electricity costs, all those added costs. I mean, the numbers that were bandied about with regards to operating costs on a 1,000 square meter building is around 40 Rand per square meter. So that's got to be absorbed by the landlord, because you can't pass it on to the tenants in this alien economy. That devalues properties. That puts strain on the properties. And so I don't know how long it's going to be or where we see the end, but I do know that the people that have come in with these new ideas and innovating ideas to change properties and to invest in properties and to offer something different is a great thing. And we're excited about that. And I think that's where this new price setting and this new ideas actually gives us a bit of something to look forward to.
There's nothing like a crisis to spark creativity. I mean, it's not comfortable. Nobody likes it. Nobody is happy with it. But it does force a dramatic rethink of what property looks like into the future. Norman's given us a bit of an outlook there, Thushano. I'm going to wrap up with you and just wonder where you see this sector in a year or two. Is it as gloomy as it feels right now?
Well, we'd like to hope that things will all be rosy for all of us from now moving forward forever. I think we still have to keep on top of things, and we're not in the clear yet with the market, with COVID and other macroeconomic factors, those that have been existing forever and that will continue to impact the sector. I think rising interest rates, rising fuel costs, among other things, really do pose a challenge to people in the sector, and the property market needs to be innovative and really create value for stakeholders such that we, remain competitive in the market. So I think we really have to wait it out and see, but not the easiest road ahead.
Most certainly isn't. Property analyst at Liberty 2 Degrees, Thushano Mogale, thank you very much indeed. And the Chief Executive of Broll Sales and Auctions, Norman Raad. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Today.
Thank you.